Hey guys, so if you've been recently diagnosed, you've heard something, a lot of salt, a lot of water. Now, when I was diagnosed, I thought I was eating healthy, I'm like, I thought I was pretty good, but the problem is that for me, salt had connected to unhealthy, chips, unhealthy, pretzels, unhealthy, because there was so much salt. So when they said, you need to increase your salt, I was thinking, wait, what? I thought I was supposed to be healthy. What is this? So when they said you need to increase your salt, I didn't know how, because I had connected salt with being unhealthy. So I kind of had to retrain my brain to think, okay, so salt is good for me. Salt holds the water. The water is what, keeps my blood thick, gets it to my brain. Stupid camera, motherfucker. Anyways, so I had to re-evaluate how I felt about salt. But the problem is that when you think of eating a lot of salt, you think of a lot of junk food, a lot of, salted popcorn and salted roast nuts and a lot of chips and stuff like that. So you're tempted to eat things you automatically think are salty. However, the problem is that salt, a lot of times, especially when it's unhealthy, is salt and carbs. So by eating the salt, you're also increasing your carbs, which means, especially for us who, people with POTS or with NCS or have some kind of other dysautonomia, we are more exercise intolerant, which means we're eating more carbs for the salt, but that also means we're eating more carbs, but we're not getting as much exercise. And so that's when you get the weight gain. Now you're going to gain weight just because you are eating more salt, and that's okay. However, especially if you're wanting to maintain your weight, you have to kind of think about other ways you can get salt that's overall more healthy for you. So, for me, I've never really been into salty food. I was always more of a pepper than a salt girl. And I still really don't like a lot of salt on my food, so this became a problem. So, for me, I've had to think of ways to get salt in without necessarily changing the way I eat. So I've found a lot of different ways, and I think it's good to have different ways because you can switch it up. So you don't get bored or sick of the same kind of salt over and over again to where you don't want to eat it anymore, because that would be bad. So I actually have a range of things that I do. Now, especially for people who are recently diagnosed, a lot of people buy these. Now, they're called thermo tabs, salt supplement buffered. And so a lot of people use this, especially if they're athletes or they need a little bit more salt. The problem with these is that they are quite literally a salt pill. And they're pretty big. And because it's salt, it's kind of like drinking a lot of salt water. So a lot of times it'll upset your stomach because of all of that salt in such a small, concentrated tablet. So I don't use them as much. So I use them more as a backup. If I know I'm not going to be near salt, but I still need it. My favorite go-to as far as salt goes is actually V8. Now you would think that this is all healthy. However, what normal people don't know is that this can, which is an average soda can size, has 920 milligrams of salt. Now, if someone drank a ton of these all the time and they were a normal person, not so good. However, for us, it's great because it is that salt bomb. You get a lot of salt all at once, but you get, all of your goodness out of your food. And it tastes good, at least to me. But especially in the morning, when you're really wanting to get that salt in pretty quickly so that you can kind of kickstart your day, this is a great way to do it. So, I think the average person is supposed to have about 25 100 milligrams of salt a day. And for us, it's closer to 300, 350, even 4,000, depending on how much salt you need. So if you drink 3 of these a day, you'd make that 3,000 mark. And for sure, you'll know you've gotten your salt for that day. So I really like these. I don't do 3 a day for the most part. Sometimes it's all 2. But I always get one in the morning because I feel like that's the quickest way to get my salt. But you get your veggies in there, and it kind of kickstarts your day so that you're not starting the day out with no salt. So the water's just running through and not doing you any good. In the beginning, I didn't really know about V8. I actually got a tip about this later on. So what I was doing was, okay, what's got salt in it? And I thought of soy sauce. Now, in the beginning, I was doing a tablespoon shot of this. And it got my salt in. It was very fast, and you get used to it, was basically what I thought. But it's a good way, if you're really wanting just a fast way to get your salt before you walk out the door, this was a way to do it. And I just found it was quick, it was easy, and it got your salt. Something that was a little nicer on my stomach, besides the soy sauce shots that I was doing, was I thought, okay, well, what else has salt in it? And so I thought of bouillon. Now, bouillon, just powder like this, is usually used for soup. So what I would do was that I would measure it out, put it in water, microwave it, and you have, you know, chicken soup, basically, without anything in it. But, you know, you eat your chicken soup and you drink the liquid. So this was a good way. It was almost kind of like your morning coffee, except you were just drinking your chicken broth. And let's see. So this one says that a serving is 1 teaspoon and 1 serving is 870 milligrams. Again, it's a lot of salt, so you can get it in the morning. And for sure, you know how much salt you're getting. A complaint I had in the beginning was, I don't know how much salt I'm getting. I'm being told salt on my food, but how much salt am I putting on my food? Am I getting enough salt? And I was convinced I was never actually reaching that salt mark. So this is a good way, again, in the morning, in the afternoon, whatever works for you, to make sure that you know how much salt you've gotten that day. Granted, there's going to be natural salt in the foods that you eat every day, but this is a good way to make sure you've gotten the majority of your salt. For sure you know. So this was a really good option in the morning. So instead of a cup of joe, it was a cup of chicken broth. Now, in the beginning, the soy sauce and the chicken broth were my go-to. I hadn't really thought of doing anything else. So, but then the question was, okay, well, how am I supposed to get my salt when I'm out of the house? When I'm traveling, when I'm trying to go to school, go to work, whatever. So I turned to the chicken bouillon cubes, which come like this. Now, these are really cool. The only problem is that you have to use really hot water. So a lot of times I go to like a Starbucks and ask for a hot cup of water, and I let this sit, but it takes time to dissolve. So these are really good if you like the chicken broth route. Just know that it takes a little bit to dissolve. And I found that, you know, shaking it up a lot of times made it dissolve faster. So that's an option. So we've gone over the soy sauce, we've gone over the bouillon, the V8, and the salt tablets, which I'm not a fan of. What else has salt? Well, what people don't realize is that pickles. Pickles have a lot of salt because they are in a brine, which is salt and water. That's what makes them pickles. So they do have a lot of salt in them. So this one says a serving, 1 ounce, about half a pickle. And it says that half a pickle has 390 milligrams of sodium. So if you're into pickles pickle in the morning, pickle in the middle of the day, whatever works. If you like pickles, this is a good way to do it. And if you're not necessarily into the pickles, but you like the idea of the soy sauce shots, you can also take a shot of the pickle juice because you get a lot of salt that way. Now, a lot of people, when they're thinking, okay, gotta put salt in my food, gotta put salt in my food, they're thinking of table salt. And although table salt is cool, it's actually not the best tasting salt. There are other kinds of salt, and other kinds of salt that actually have more nutritional value to you than table salt. And my favorite is the Himalayan pink salt. And this is just in a grinder, and you can find pink salt anywhere. And it doesn't have that super salt taste where it almost hits you over the head with it. And you can put it on absolutely anything. So this is a really good option. And it just makes it to where eating the salt is more enjoyable, and just instead of having those granulated, very measured, little grains of salt where it's almost gritty in your food, this one can be powdered because it's a grinder. And it's fancy. You gotta have fun. Another kind of salt that I have is Himalayan black salt. And I don't use this as often, only because I'm not nearly as familiar with it. But this one's also a good one. It's got almost like a smoky flavor to it. But I would definitely encourage you to look at other kinds of salt, because there are more kinds of salt than just table salt. And also look and kind of find your own ways to get your salt content. Because although these are definitely some options, they're not the only options. And there's ways to get salt into your diet that doesn't require pretzels and chips and other carb-heavy foods. And lastly, and this is something I didn't realize existed, but my grandma got it for me, it is a Himalayan salt slab. And the way that this one works is that you quite literally use it like a baking sheet. So you can stick your shrimp on there, you can stick your meat on there, and your meat naturally absorbs that salt. And an interesting part of this is because it's salt, you think, oh, I'm putting seafood on it. Is it going to be a food hazard because, is it going to grow bacteria? And that's not the case. Because it is salt, it actually naturally kills the bacteria. So it's a very clean way to cook your food. It's quick, it's easy, it's fancy, it's fun. So these are just some tips and tricks as far as your salt goes. Don't just stick with table salt, because there's so much more out there that's equally, if not more effective, that tastes good, and it gives you a little bit of variety, because especially if you're going to be eating so much salt, especially if you're not a big salt lover like me, it makes it a lot more bearable to get your salt intake. But yeah, so these are my kind of tips and tricks. So I hope that I was of some help. And if you have any more questions, or if you have your own salt tips and tricks for me, I am more than happy to hear them, because I'm always looking for new ways to get my salt in. So hope to see you later.